People often say that Americans speak very directly. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever thought that? Well, in some cases it's true, but quite often, in everyday English conversation, we tend to soften our language in order to sound less direct. And that's what today's podcast English lesson is all about.
Welcome to another Happy English podcast coming to you from New York City. And here's your English teacher, Michael.
All right. Thank you, John, and thanks, everyone. It's Michael here from Happy English, and I help people speak English better. And this is Happy English Podcast, episode 997, How Native Speakers Soften Statements in English. And before we get started, I have something special coming up. Episode 1000 of the Happy English Podcast drops on February 28th, and I'd really love to include you in it. Yes, you. If you've been listening for a while and this podcast has helped you in any way, please send me a short message. About 20 to 40 seconds is fine. Just tell me your first name, where you're listening from, and how long you've been listening and how the podcast has helped you. You can record it on your phone in a quiet room and email the audio to me at michael@myhappyenglish.com. That's michael@myhappyenglish.com. And if you'd rather write a message instead, that's totally fine too. Some of your messages will be featured in episode 1000, so please send them by February 27th. I can't wait to hear from you. Okay, let's dive into today's topic. Have you ever noticed that native speakers don't always speak in extremes? We often use phrases to soften our language, like, I'm kinda tired, or it's a bit cold outside. Or when someone asks, are you hungry? We don't always say no. We say, not really. Native speakers soften things all the time. So today, we're going to look at 5 very common softening phrases. Kinda, sorta, a bit, a little, and not really. These small phrases can completely change your tone and make your English sound more natural, more polite, and more conversational. Let's start with kind of. We use kind of to make something sound less strong and less direct. Instead of sounding 100% certain or dramatic, kind of reduces the intensity. And here's a pronunciation tip. We usually say kind of like kinda. Like, imagine you stayed up too late watching Netflix, and the next morning your coworker says, you look tired. You could reply with, yeah, I'm kinda tired today. That sounds softer and more casual than saying, yes, I'm tired today. Or let's say you try a new restaurant and your friend asks, so how was it? If you didn't love it, but you don't want to be harsh, you might say, it was kind of expensive for what we got. That sounds honest, but not aggressive. Sort of works almost exactly the same way. Sort of also softens a statement and makes it less direct. And just like kind of sounds like kinda, sort of is usually pronounced sorta in casual speech, like, I sorta get it, or I'm sorta confused. For example, if your manager asks, did you understand the new system? And you're not completely confident, you might say, yeah, I sorta get it. That sounds more natural than saying, I do not understand. Or imagine your friend asks, are you mad? And you don't want to start a big discussion. You might say, no, I'm not mad. I'm just sort of frustrated. Again, sorta softens the feeling and is very natural. Now, let's move on to a bit and a little. These are also softeners, but they usually describe degree, especially with adjectives. Imagine you're at a friend's house and they ask if you're comfortable. Instead of saying, "It's hot in here," which can sound like a complaint, you might say, "It's a bit warm in here," or "It's a little warm." That sounds much more polite and relaxed. Or imagine you're trying a dish at a restaurant and your friend asks, "What do you think?" Instead of saying, "It's salty," you might say, "It's a little salty." That softens your opinion and makes it sound less critical. Here's another one. If you're watching a movie and your friend asks, "Are you following the story?" Instead of saying, "This doesn't make any sense," you might say, "I'm a bit confused." And if someone asks how you're feeling after a long day, instead of saying, "I'm exhausted," you could say, "I'm a little tired." These small changes make your English sound calm and natural. Now, let's talk about not really. Not really is a common soft negative answer in English. Instead of saying a hard no, we often say, "Not really." Like if a friend asks, "Are you hungry?" you can say, "Not really, I just ate." That sounds a lot softer than just saying no. Or imagine your friend says, "Hey, did you like the movie?" and you didn't love it. Instead of saying, "No, it was bad," you might say, "Not really, it was kind of slow." Notice how we can combine these softeners. Here's another situation. Your coworker asks, "Are you finished with that project?" If you're almost done but not completely, you might say, "Not really, I still need about an hour." Again, "not really" avoids a blunt response. So, let's step back for a second. Native speakers soften statements for three main reasons. First, to avoid sounding too strong or too dramatic. That's where kinda and sorta come in. Second, to be polite, especially when describing problems or giving feedback. That's where a bit and a little are useful. Third, to soften negative answers. That's where "not really" shines. These small phrases don't weaken your English. They actually make you sound more socially aware and more fluent. So, here's your challenge. This week, instead of saying "I'm tired," try saying "I'm kinda tired." And instead of saying "It's cold," say "It's a bit cold." And instead of saying "no," try "not really." That's how you start sounding more natural. And keep in mind, the best way to remember English like this, and any other word or phrase in English, is to take that word or phrase, write it in a sentence that's true for you or true in your world, and then memorize your sentences. Hey, thanks for listening. And remember, learning another language is not easy, but it's not impossible. And I'm here to help you on your journey.
This podcast is brought to you by Happy English. Please visit myhappyenglish.com. Show your support for Happy English by leaving us a review. Get English, get happy, Happy English.